Whether by land or by sea, some countries and regions of the world are prone to invasion. North America is not one of them. Invading North America's major countries, Canada, the United States, and Mexico, would not just be exceedingly difficult, but pretty much impossible. A suicide mission, in fact. There are several reasons, including geography, military capability, population sizes, and landmass. Let's start with the US. In 1917, the US decided to enter World War I and provided much-needed assistance to the Allied powers. It was a turning point in America's history, as the sleeping giant entered the world stage, forever changing its role in global affairs. President Woodrow Wilson said at the time that the world must be made safe for democracy. Although cynics will disagree, it can be argued that this basic philosophy has continued to shape America's policies regarding international matters. The United States established itself as a world superpower at the end of World War II, with a huge population, highly developed economy, and most crucially, unrivaled military power, with the possible exception of the Soviet Union. Since then, America has been the most influential nation in the world, both economically and politically, forming alliances, intervening in foreign, maintaining frosty civilities, and above all, continuing to strengthen its military force. And while there currently exists a very real power struggle amongst global powers, America's might cannot be denied. This has earned them plenty of allies and enemies alike, which begs the hypothetical question: why hasn't America been invaded? Basically, it'd be really hard, save for a full-scale nuclear attack. First of all, there's the obvious strength. America is a military powerhouse. While countries such as China and India might have the numbers in terms of actual armed forces, the US has by far the world's most devastating arsenal of firepower. It's no secret that America spends a lot of money on its military, but it's drastically more than other countries, and they've been doing it for a long time. It's estimated that the United States spends around $760 billion on its military every year, compared to the next biggest, with China at $270 billion. This means not only massive reserves of weapons, but also the most innovative technology available, which would allow American surveillance services to immediately detect any self-assured attempts at staging an invasion. And if an invasion has to come by sea, here's a sobering thought. America has 47 aircraft carriers, which is the most in the world. These include 11 monster nuclear carriers, which can hold 80, yes, 80 fighter planes each. That's more than every other country combined, and to give you an idea, China most likely has 2, and Russia has just 1. That is a serious advantage in strike power towards anyone thinking about making a huge voyage across the Pacific or the Atlantic Oceans. Which brings us to why invading any part of North America is seriously problematic. The Pacific to the west and the Atlantic to the east are massive oceans, and it would take not only a long time to reach the North American coastline, but any invading force would be almost immediately detected and then blown off the face of the earth by America's naval and airstrikes. But for fun, let's just for, giggles, imagine somebody actually does make it across one of those massive oceans. Where would they land? Where would they strike from? If they elected for Canada, the least populated areas would be to the north, say in Yukon or Newfoundland. The timing would have to be crucial because winter temperatures in northern Canada regularly hit below 0 degrees Celsius. On top of that, Canada has famously rugged terrain, with numerous mountain ranges on both sides of the country, making it extremely difficult to coordinate troops and personnel. The lower parts of Canada in British Columbia and Quebec are far more heavily populated. While Canadian armed forces are small in numbers on a global scale, they would be immediately reinforced with American support from the south. Invading via Canada would be tough. So what about Mexico? Mexico's military is ranked at being around 31 in the world in terms of capability and strike. Well, that's hardly overwhelming. The support from America would be immediate. In 2022, the U.S. State Department declared that Mexico remains one of the United States' closest and most valued partners. America has some of the world's largest military bases, and many of them are to the south in Texas, Kentucky, and Georgia, just a stone's throw from Mexico. Making invasion more difficult would be dealing with Mexican deserts. In the northwest, the Sonoran Desert covers about 311,000 square kilometers, while the center is North America's biggest desert. The Chihuahuan Desert has a whopping area of about 362,000 square kilometers. So if for some miracle an invading force actually made it across the sea and somehow found its way onto North American mainland, what next? Let's not even consider the overwhelming might of the American military that would just be buzzing in anticipation of going into action. And how about the civilian populations of these countries who would be more than ready to take a stand? Canada has around 40 million people, Mexico 130 million people, and the US at least 330 million. That's 500 million people that you're up against. Not to mention the number of weapon owners in America and Mexico, which has similar gun rights as the US. Canada has far stricter gun regulations, but its armed forces have an impressive history of performing admirably in a wide number of global conflicts. Then we have the ex-armed forces, plus ex and current law enforcement officers in each country, all adding up to a very persuasive, "Please leave North America now" argument. The US and Canada in particular also have highly developed infrastructures and modern economies. Supplies, reinforcements, and ammunitions could be zapped from coast to coast effortlessly. Last of all would be the huge backing from North American allies from around the world. Whether political, historical, or economic reasons, many powerful nations would simply jump in to support the North American countries. The UK, France, Germany, Japan, Australia, South Korea, and Brazil are closely aligned with North America and all have highly efficient and well-developed militaries. As grim as things may seem at times, it's worth remembering that everyone is highly aware of everyone else's capabilities, and in North America's case, it's more capable than most other people. This means that usually sanity prevails. Besides, preparing, planning, and carrying out an invasion starting across the Pacific or Atlantic Oceans, it just seems like too much hard work. In the 1984 futuristic action film Red Dawn, the United States was invaded by an alliance of its enemies. This included the Soviet Union and several Latin American states, who were able to successfully stage a land invasion of the US. Naturally, the invading forces were defeated by a heroic band of teenagers who called themselves the Wolverines. The film was an obviously far-fetched yet entertaining thriller that required viewers to massively suspend their disbelief. It would seem that almost 40 years later, this is still the closest that we'll see to a successful invasion of North America, at least in our lifetimes.